Well, happy Sunday and welcome to City View Online. I am so glad that you're here and carving out part of your day to spend with us. If you were with us for Easter last Sunday, what an incredible day we had. We had an awesome time meeting your friends, your family, your neighbors that you egged. However it was that you were a part of this day, we are glad that you were, and we are excited for all that God's going to do in your life in the coming weeks to come here as you continue to come and build community, and we are so excited for what God's going to do. Well, we have some exciting things going on around here, starting tomorrow night with our Woven event. And if you've been around for any period of time, you've kind of learned what our Woven event is. But if you don't know, this is our monthly women's gathering that we have, where once a month, all of us women come together and have some sort of event. So tomorrow night at 6 p.m. right here at the church, we are doing a women's pampering party because every lady loves some time to relax and have some fun with the girls. And so we want you to come here 6 p.m. It's $5. Bring your friends with you to enjoy in the special night. It's a kid-free event, so you can be just with the ladies having fun. And we're going to be making body scrubs and salts and all this fun stuff for you to pamper yourself with at home. And so we hope that you can join us for that. It's one of my favorite events, just to be with all the women in the church and building community and relationships together. And then on the 30th, the last Sunday of this month, we will be having our baptisms. And baptisms are a great way to celebrate you as you take that next step in your faith journey. And so whether it's you've been a believer for a while now and you haven't been baptized, or you recently made that decision, we want to celebrate you with your friends and your family. So sign up at cityviewcc.com/events and we'll be in touch with all the details that you need to know about baptism. Well, let's jump into some awesome worship and a message, and I'll see you right after.
Good morning, family. How's everybody doing? Come on, let's stand to our feet as we worship this morning. Come on. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. Let's sing this together. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, and you called me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, shout it out, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Thank you, Lord. Out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Come on. Come on, give him praise this morning.
Well, hey, welcome to part 2 of our God and the Underdogs series. And last week we got to look and take a glimpse at the life of Peter and how one of the worst moments of his life, a moment where he felt he had messed everything up in his life. We saw how Jesus redeemed it and restored it. And Peter ends up going on to be one of the most significant leaders within the church in history. And so this whole series is about that there are moments where we feel underutilized and overlooked and unseen and like underdogs, and how God uses us in those moments. And he sees us not as underdogs, but for exactly who he created us to be. And so today we're going to be talking about how we navigate those seasons of our lives, those moments when it feels like we're overlooked or we feel like we're stuck or underutilized, those moments when we feel like an underdog. And we're going to see that in the life of an Old Testament hero in the life of Moses. But before we get there, I want to talk to you a little bit about my dad. So many of you didn't get a chance to meet my dad. He passed away in the summer of 2020. And he was a character. He was so hilarious. And one thing that you might not know about my dad was he was a little bit of a conspiracy guy. Not like tinfoil on the head, aliens kind of conspiracy or political conspiracy. But you got to understand, like, our family is from this like little pirate island in the Caribbean. And that pirate blood just makes you assume that you can't trust the system. Right? And so that was kind of how my dad was about everything. He was always on the lookout to see, what was really going on here. I just want to figure this thing out. And so my dad got an iPhone, and a little while after, he discovered Siri. And this became his best friend on the planet. They were fast friends, but it quickly became this love-hate relationship. And I remember countless times we would be sitting around somewhere and we'll talk about something and we aren't sure what to do. And he would just almost like giddy. He's like, I know what we can do. Siri, how do we? And he would just ask the question. But the problem is, for those of you who have an iPhone, Siri is one of the most useless inventions in the history of the world. She never gets it right. It's always chaos. It's like, no, that's not what I asked you. No, that's not the directions I needed. No. And so he would just get so frustrated. And it was one night, the girls had gone to bed, and Lauren and I were just chilling downstairs, watching TV together. And my dad comes storming through the hallway upstairs, begins to make this proclamation from the top of the stairs. They're listening to us. They're listening. I knew it all along. Siri is a spy. And we're like, bro, first of all, calm down. You're going to wake up the children. Like, what is wrong with you? And he realized that behind the scenes, she had been listening to him and picking up little information, and without him realizing it until this moment, all of the ads on his phone started popping up, things that he was researching and talking about. And the final straw was that he got a spam text message about something he was researching. And that was it. His conspiracy triggers went off, and he's like, this is no. And so he just started shutting everything down. He turned locations off on his phone. He turned Siri off in his phone. He went so far that he went to AT&T and he said, remove her from my phone. And they're like, sir, she's kind of like built in with the Apple technology. There's no taking her out. He's like, take her out. I don't want her listening to me anymore. And he was researching all these things to get them to stop listening to you. And it was just an absolute mess. And I tell you that story because many times you and I, we miss what's actually happening in the background, what's happening behind the scenes. And it leads us to this truth that some of the most significant opportunities in your life are being set up behind the scenes. And just like our phones are working behind the scenes and we don't recognize it, so is God. But he's a little bit more useful than an app. You see, we assume because we don't see anything happening in our life in this moment, in this exact season, and what we're facing, we assume that in our relationships, we assume in our job, in our future, that nothing is happening. But what we're going to see is through the life of Moses that God is always working behind the scenes. God is always in action. The Bible says that he never sleeps. He never takes a day off. Like he is always at work. And when we feel like we're stuck in life, God is actually doing all kinds of things that we miss. So we jump into the story in Exodus 2, starting in verse 23. It says, years passed, and the king of Egypt died. But the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. And they cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he looked down on the people of Israel, and he knew it was time to act. Meanwhile, that's a really significant word. I'm going to unpack that in just a second. But meanwhile, Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. But that word meanwhile is significant. Meanwhile, in other words, while Israel is crying out for salvation, crying out for help, God is calling Moses from a burning bush on what feels like a random Tuesday. While Israel feels like nothing is changing in their present circumstances, God's work was hidden. You see, Israel didn't realize that God had been preparing Moses in the desert for his assignment in the future. They didn't realize and know that God had planned in advance how he was going to use Moses' upbringing in the Egyptian palace. They didn't understand how God was redeeming his story after Moses murdered an Egyptian and he ran away and got to the desert as far away as he possibly could be. And for 40 years, he'd just been a shepherd caring for sheep. They didn't see how God was orchestrating all of this. That meanwhile was decades in the making. That meanwhile was God speaking to Moses 200 miles away from the middle of their oppression. That meanwhile was proving that God was working even when we don't see it. You see, God knows the battles ahead, and he knows the preparation that we need before we even recognize that there's a conflict on the horizon. God is preparing us. God is behind the scenes. God has gone before us into our future, and he knows what it is that we need. So in these seasons where we feel stuck and like nothing is happening, like the Egyptians, like the Israelites in Egypt, as they're feeling this oppression and this slavery, and they're going, God, would you hear us? He's hearing them, and he's at work. But for them, there's no way they could have known what God was doing behind the scenes. You see, many times our preparation doesn't make sense in the present, but it's exactly what we need in our future. What you're facing in this season may not make sense for right now. What you've been through in your past, what you've tackled, and the mountains that you've climbed, and the mountains that you've had to dig through and go right through the center of all of that hardship, those things don't make sense in the present. But it's preparation for the future. It's preparation that God is working. As God starts to lay all of this out to Moses, he has no idea the adventure that he's about to go on. He assumes that his mistake had disqualified him from anything significant. So he just decides, I'm going to go 200 miles away, and I'm going to watch sheep, and I'm just going to stay out here in the desert and just live my life this way. I'm just trying to get away from the mistake that I made. And I just wonder for you, before we look at Moses' story, what do you feel like is disqualifying your dream? What mistake do you feel has disqualified you from God using you in the way that he's always meant to all along? I want you to ask yourself that question as we look, as Moses responds to God's call. Genesis 3:7, it says, Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries and distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering, so I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, and Hittites, the Amorites, Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. And I can see Moses in this moment. He's nodding his head. He's like, yeah, this is good. This is what I've been praying for. That's why I killed that dude, because I couldn't take it anymore. I'm ready for you to show up. And then God does something he didn't expect. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. Wait. Look here, burning bush. I hear the voice of God. What are you talking about? What do you mean me? Like, this is awesome. I'm glad you're going to rescue them, but not me. Isn't this how we respond to God when he calls us? When you feel like he's pushing you to do something in your life, when you hear a message and you feel inspired and you're like, wait, that must be for somebody else. That one's not for me. Don't we have those moments where we pray prayers like, hey, God, would you help my friend who's going through a hard time? Hey, God, would you help my uncle who needs to give his life to you? He needs you to show up. Hey, God, that coworker in my life that really needs to go to church, would you put someone in their life that will help them see that and recognize how valuable it is to them? And God says, yeah, I will. I put you in their life. I put you there to help them. I put you there to tell them about Jesus. I put you there to invite them to church. Whoa. No, thank you. That's not what I wasn't talking about me. That's uncomfortable. I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough. I don't have the words. I don't. And this is exactly what Moses does. He goes on a full-scale campaign to prove to God why this calling was wrong for him. In verse 11, it says, But Moses protested to God, Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? And God answered, I will be with you. And this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. Moses says, in other words, hey, what qualifies me to go? Like, who am I? What gives me the right? What gives me the authority? What gives me the ability? What gives me the opportunity? I don't have the training. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the wisdom. I don't have the credentials. And God says, I will be with you. Moses says, what qualifies me to go? And God says, I will be with you. In other words, our qualification for our calling is God's presence. Our qualification for our calling, your qualification. Well, Danny, I don't know if I have the training. I don't know who am I. What right do I have? And I don't. God goes, you know what your qualification is to do what I've called you to do? Me. I will be with you. That's your qualification. That's all you need. My presence is your qualifier. That is so significant. It's his presence that marks us. It's his presence that prepares us. It's his presence that opens the door for us. It's his presence that gives us the words. It's his presence that allows us to accomplish the assignment we've been given. It was so cool. I was prepping for this message, and I remembered that way back, almost 10 years ago, I was working at a church, but I wasn't preaching at all. I wasn't preaching anytime. Like, I wasn't preparing messages or anything like that. That wasn't my role at the church. I was leading a team, but I felt stuck. I was hoping for God to use me in some bigger ways, and I was hoping that God would just open a door for me in my life and give me an opportunity to lead at a bigger capacity. And at this time, I felt like I was just so hidden. I was so unseen. I was so overlooked. And I started to do a study on the life of Moses, and I came across my notes as I was looking for this. And I wrote these words down almost 10 years ago. The best positions of leadership are the ones you couldn't have attained without the intervention of the Most High. The best positions of leadership are the ones where there's no way you could have had them unless God intervened, unless God got right in the center of it, unless God's presence opened the door. And if you would have told me on the day that I wrote down that word I felt like from the Lord, I would have said you're crazy. If you would have told me what I'm doing right now, I would have never believed you. I would have never seen it. I would never see how this happened. The fact that I'm standing here is not based on some well-formulated scheme in order to get me into this position. It was simply the fact that God had gone before me. He had began preparing me for what he had in store for me in my future. And it was his presence that qualified me and opened the doors to stand in the places that I stand today. It wasn't some scheme or some level of education or some certain opportunity. And if I can climb this ladder this certain way, it was God going, I'm preparing you for something you don't even know is in your future. What I'm asking you to do right now is to go. And my presence will go with you. As God continues to reassure him and starts giving him some words and starts pouring, Moses is like, no, I'm not buying this. And it continues on, Exodus 4, verse 1. But Moses protested again. He says, what if they don't believe me or listen to me? What if they say, the Lord never appeared to you? And then the Lord asked him, what is that in your hand? He said, a shepherd's staff, Moses replied. Throw it down on the ground, the Lord told him. So Moses threw the staff down and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back because that's just weird. Like God, let's not play with snakes. Like, it's unnecessary. Like, let's just leave them weird things all alone. Then the Lord told him, reach out and grab its tail. At this point is when I would have been out. Like, I don't do snakes. I don't play games with them. No, thank you. Grab his tail. So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. He said, perform this sign, the Lord told him, then they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, really has appeared to you. I wonder for how many of you have what if the dream into the ground? Well, what if, and what if, and what about, what if, how many of you have what ifed a relationship into chaos? Well, what if you leave me? What if you hurt me? What if you do what they did? What if, how many of you have what ifed a blessing into a curse? I wonder how many times our what ifs are so deeply rooted in our feelings about being inadequate or things being insufficient. This feeling that we don't have enough. And this is what Moses starts to do. Moses is saying, well, what if they don't believe me? What if they don't listen? What if this happens? What if that? And what I love is that God doesn't send him to go get more. He asks him a powerful question. He says, what do you have in your hand right now? What do you already have? You see, when we're hyper-focused on our insufficiencies, we lose focus on the all-sufficient one. When we're hyper-focused on what we don't have, when we highlight what we don't have over and over again, and we use that as a weapon against what God is calling us to do, we lose focus on the one who promises to be the sufficiency we need. We lose focus on the God who is the creator of all things and provides all the things that we need and provides the way that we need to get there. We lose focus on where it should be. We feel frustrated because we're trying to multiply something that God didn't give us to begin with. We're trying to multiply. Well, if I had that, if I had more of that, and God's like, stop. What do you have now? What have I already given you? We assume that more is the answer in order to step into our calling. More is the answer that we need in order to accomplish what we hope we'll accomplish. We need more in order to get to that dream. But more times than not, God actually uses what we currently have to do the miraculous. Just quickly, when you think about the characters throughout the Bible, when I think about Paul had schooling and education, and he had a pen. And he ended up writing the vast majority of the entire New Testament. So much of our understanding of our faith comes from his pen. That's what he had. Because most of the time, he was writing it from prison. Peter had a big mouth, and he became one of the most significant voices in the history of the church. He was a prominent voice for Jesus to the Jews. Think about David. David only had a sling. All I have is this sling. But it's exactly what he needed to defeat a giant from a distance. We think about the little boy in the Gospels that only had a Lunchable, and Jesus takes what he had and he multiplies it to feed thousands and thousands of people. Moses has a staff that would play a significant role in miracle after miracle after miracle in the desert. What do you have? Stop allowing this idea of the insufficiencies to rob you of your focus on the all-sufficient one. All of this is leading to the true root of Moses' struggles. He says this in verse 10. Moses pleaded with the Lord, "Oh Lord, listen, I'm not very good with words. I never have been. I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled." And then the Lord asked Moses, listen to this, who makes a person's mouth? I mean, what a trump card, right? Who made your mouth? Who created that mouth that you have? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. Again, here's the qualifier. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. Moses reveals his insecurity at the root of all of this. He says, hey, God, how can I do this if I can't even speak? How can I lead your nation? How can I go before Pharaoh and I can't even get my words to come out right? I don't have what it takes. I'm broken. I'm not enough. Not only do I not have enough, I'm not enough. His insecurities come to the surface. And how many of us have been in the same position as Moses? You would say, hey, Danny, this is all great, but how can I live on mission when I can't even... Danny, how can God use me when I still struggle with... How can I do all of this when I can't even... And we self-doubt and self-sabotage, and we allow our insecurities to hold us back. And God says, who created you? If I created you, and I'm calling you, don't you think I know what you have and what you don't have? Don't you think I know what you can do and you can't do? Don't you think, Moses, I know what's up with your mouth and your words because I'm the one who gave them to you? You see, it's so powerful. Moses, who created your mouth? You see, we limit our impact to the size of our ability rather than the size of God's capacity. We limit our impact to what we can do, our ability, our gifts, our talents. And God goes, do you even know who put those there? Oh, God, I don't have this. Don't you think I know that? I'm the one who created you. We feel like underdogs because it's based on our ability. And God says, you're missing my capacity. You're missing what I can do because you're putting it all on you. It's such a powerful truth. You see, we view our future through the lens of our present abilities, through the lens of our present capacity, through the lens of our present strength, what we can do right now. But the Apostle Paul tells us this powerful truth about what happens in our weakness. The Apostle Paul, with his pen from prison, is telling us, hey, I had this struggle, I had this weakness, I had this thorn in my side that I beg God to remove from me. God, if you would take this away, I would be so much better. I would be able to reach more people. I'd be able to do even more if you took away this weakness. And look at how God responds. 2 Corinthians 12, he says, but he answered me, my grace is always more than enough for you. And my power finds its full expression through your weakness. And this is what Paul decides. So I will celebrate my weaknesses, for when I am weak, I sense more deeply the mighty power of Christ living in me. So I'm not defeated by my weakness, but delighted. For when I feel my weakness and endure mistreatment, when I'm surrounded with troubles on every side and face persecution because of my love for Christ, I am made stronger. And this line here, man, it gets me every time. For my weakness becomes a portal to God's power. My weakness becomes a portal to God's power. Listen, that struggle you thought would destroy you is the exact spot where God will heal you and use it to do the miraculous. That exact place of your weakness, your insecurity, your fear, your anxiety, your struggles, your habits, your addictions, that place that you feel was always there that was going to break you. If you allow God to heal you, it is through that portal of weakness that he will prove his strength. It's through that place that God will expand his miraculous power in your life. It isn't through our strengths that we see him show up even more. It is through our weakness. And it leads us to this final truth. What you see as a limitation, God sees as an opportunity to show his power. What you see as all the reasons why God shouldn't use you is the exact place where he goes, this is where I can't wait to show up. You and I live as these underdogs based on our insecurities, based on our insufficiencies, based on our qualifications. And God goes, I ain't worried about any of those. Those places that you feel should hold you back are the places my power shows up the greatest. It is so amazing. Listen, you're looking for answers that make sense to you. You're trying to use your abilities to make things happen on your own, but the reality is God has no intention of allowing you to figure it out on your own without him. The way he created you is with this God-shaped hole in your soul. And the only way for you to reach your fullest potential, the only way for you to step fully into your purpose, the only way for you to truly live on mission and make the total impact that God has created you to make is to allow him to fill the hole. There's no one else. There's nothing else. There's nothing on earth that can fill the hole that God was always meant to fill. Moses is overwhelmed by this opportunity in front of him. Moses felt disqualified. He felt underqualified. He felt his insufficiencies. He felt his insecurities. He felt all of those things. And God systematically just says, I got that covered. What I need you to do now is to trust me, and I need you to go. I need you to step in. I need you to live out what I created you to do. The purpose that's right there. Our qualifications, our insecurities, our insufficiencies are all handled by an all-sufficient Heavenly Father who knows you, who sees you, who doesn't see you as some underdog. He sees you as exactly who he created you to be. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I'm so thankful for this story of Moses because so many times we put so much pressure on ourselves to do things in our own way and to use our skills and use our strengths. And I'm so thankful, God, that our qualifications is based on your presence. It isn't based on our education. It isn't based on our experiences. It isn't based on what we can do. It isn't based on our strengths. It's simply based on the fact that the God of creation has promised to be with us. And so, Lord, I pray in this moment that you would help us to stop making excuses for not stepping into our purpose. That we'd stop looking for someone else to be the answer that you've called us to be. Help us lean into who you created us to be, not overlook it. Help us to understand that where we feel like an underdog, that's exactly where your strength shows up the greatest. Lord, we surrender our lives to you. We trust you. We put our hope in you. And we thank you that you see us, not for our flaws, not for where we are now, but for what you've already started to prepare us for in the future. We love you and we thank you. Pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I am so grateful that God is always working in the background, even when we can't see it. He's working behind the scenes, making things happen in our lives. And the one thing that we need to do is just focus on Him. And when we focus on Him, our eyes are open to the opportunities ahead of us to be able to live on mission. And we learned it last week with Peter's life, and this week we learned about Moses' life, that these were people that didn't feel called or equipped or had the qualifications to be able to live a life that was full of Jesus, to live on mission and make an impact. And I'm sure that many of us feel that same way as well. But when we continue to focus on Him, He will continue to use us if we allow it. And so it's such a great and inspiring, takeaway for me today, and I hope that it is for you as well. As we talk about giving around here, we say it all the time that your giving truly makes a difference. But I'll be honest, being here last week with Easter and seeing so many new faces and so many new kids that were here, your giving created such an incredible opportunity. It created a special place where guests can come for the first time and have a cup of warm coffee in their hand and make them feel comfortable, or some fun little treats that we had, or a guest bag that they were able to grab when they got here to say thank you for thinking of me. And not only that, our kids had a blast with their egg hunt as they did something new that we've never done with the glow-in-the-dark Easter egg hunt. It just made such an imprint on so many lives. I've already had conversations with people that came last Sunday, and it truly made a difference. And that doesn't happen just because of the people that are here making it happen. It happens through your generosity that equips us and resources the church to make special moments and special events like this happen. So thank you for that. You continue to partner with us at cityviewcc.com/give. You can give right there. And we are so grateful for how your generosity is going to continue to make a difference. Ladies, I can't wait to see you tomorrow night for our Woven event, 6 p.m. right here at the church, $5. Come join us. And then if you want to be baptized, remember to sign up for that as well. We are looking forward to celebrating that day with you. But if we don't see you tomorrow night, we hope to see you next Sunday right here or in person at 8:30 and 10 a.m. See you then.